Florida has just beat New York, and now we're on our way to tackle California. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Florida is now the second most valuable housing market in the entire United States. So in this video, we're going to talk about kind of how in the world we got to this place, what's kind of going on in Florida, like what are the top 5 metros, what are we looking like, as well as what's the future looking like for Florida. Are we turning into California, or are we still Florida? And we're going to tackle all of this in this video right here. Let's start off with how Florida is the #2 most valuable market in the entire United States. So like I said, right now we just overtook New York and we're trailing only California. So California, in terms of overall values, 10.17 trillion. Florida is now in second place at 3.84 trillion. So obviously we have a long way to go. We just took over New York, who had 3.64 trillion in value. So obviously, like, no one's really on that same scale as California. So we do have a lot of work to do, but it is definitely a step in the right direction for Florida, because a lot of people are seemingly thinking that Florida is the next California or the next New York in terms of prices. And the way everything's been going, especially since the pandemic, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with them. So how in the world did we get to this point though? So over the last year, the US housing market has surged pretty much $2.6 trillion. And one of the main drivers of that has been Florida. And with that being said, what's driving Florida's prices up? What's driving Florida's values up? And a lot of that has to do with the influx of people moving here. So in 2021, we had 675,000 people move here to the state of Florida, and they're pretty much moving from all over. But the weird thing is they're actually moving from some of the states that were ahead of Florida in values. So the top 5 are New York, Georgia, oddly enough, California, New Jersey, and then Illinois. So all these people moving here, everyone's looking for home. People were looking to escape and do different things during the pandemic. But after the pandemic ended and people were working from home and just kind of overall realizing, still more and more people were continuing to move to Florida, which in turn, they're obviously looking for a place to stay or a place to rent, which now drives up the prices of these assets and in turn also the value of them. But going back to these prices being raised, it's kind of an inventory issue at the end of the day. So think about it. All these people are moving here. A lot of people locked in 2-3% rates. Obviously, they're not going to sell. There's no point in getting a little bit of a higher rate on a more expensive home to have potentially less house. So a lot of people weren't selling unless they had to or wanted to kind of cash in on an investment or just were downsizing. Everyone's got their specific reasons. So obviously we had little supply. And when there's little supply, there's a lot more buyers, which is supply and demand. So less supply, more demand drives the prices up. In doing so, you saw a lot of situations with multiple offers, people waiving a lot of contingencies and just paying, almost astronomical prices for some things. Obviously, a lot of that has slowed down as of recently, but if things are pretty much turnkey and really ready to move in, we still do see bidding wars or multiple offers in a lot of situations. So it's not like anything's slowing down. We still have very low inventory. We do have higher interest rates, so you would think there'd be less buyers, but we still have quite a few buyers, which are still driving up the prices. Another thing to consider is in Florida, a lot of the sales are actually cash sales. So in the US, almost a third of sales are cash sales, while here in the state of Florida, they range anywhere from like 35.1% in Orlando all the way up to almost 56.4% in West Palm. So obviously, if people are buying cash, it becomes a completely different animal versus that of getting financing. In terms of the areas that have gained the most since the beginning of the pandemic, they are Tampa is #1 at 88.9% appreciation. Then we have Miami at 86.6%. Then Jacksonville, which is up 82.4%. Then Orlando, which is up 72.3% since the pandemic. And then we actually have 2 markets now in the state of Florida, which are top 20 in terms of value, and we actually snuck into the top 5. So Miami, Fort Lauderdale, which is pretty much just saying South Florida, is now top 5 in the most valuable real estate markets in the entire United States. And then we also have Tampa, which is number 18. So it's pretty impressive to see that we're kind of just working our way up there in those ranks. It's good news and it's also bad news. I mean, it's good news if you own a home. I mean, they're appreciating, you're doing well, it's a great investment. It could be potentially bad news if you're looking to buy a house or just trying to get into your first home. It makes it a lot more difficult in these markets. Not impossible, but it is a little bit more difficult. So with all that being said, what's next for the state of Florida? Are we really trending all the way to become the next California? And while many people still think we are, I don't know if we really are. What I think we're starting to see though is, especially if you start looking at the trends, a lot of people moving these more concentrated areas like that of South Florida and then the Tampa area, and kind of going to more rural areas. A lot of people from South Florida are actually moving up north, and they're moving north of Palm Beach County into St. Lucie and Brevard County and pretty much the Treasure Coast area. We also see a lot of people moving into the greater Orlando area. I mean, you can just see all the things that they're building, like the Sanford, Lake Mary areas building up, Claremont's getting built up. Even when you look at the Tampa market, a lot of people are moving out of like the downtown area and they're expanding to like Wesley Chapel. They're getting a little bit more north. And then you also see that a little bit of in Cape Coral and the Fort Myers area. People are just starting to expand into areas they weren't really living in before. It was a little bit more rural or a little bit more quiet. We don't really have a whole lot of rural in the southern part of the state. But you also see people just trying to kind of get away with, there's a lot more flexibility, and they're trying to see where their dollar is going to stretch the furthest while being able to stay in the state of Florida. I think we'll continue to see that trend. I think prices will still, kind of go up a little bit. I don't think they're going to climb at the astronomical rate that they have been climbing. Things will start to level out, but it'll be interesting to see how people who are moving here, where they want to live as well, because that'll also be a huge determining factor of where we go next as a state. So let me know in the comments down below, do you think Florida's on its way to become the next California, or do you think everything in Florida is all of a sudden going to come to a screeching halt and prices are going to drop? Either way, let me know in the comments down below. And if you or anyone you know are looking to either buy, sell, or even invest here in the state of Florida, my team and I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can email me, joe@theveragroup.com. Until next video.